What's up, guys? The February Patreon rewards are now available. Terminate, Elspeth's Sun's Champion, and the Dragon are all available through the end of the month. If you'd like to support our channel and pick up these sweet proxies, you can do so at patreon.com/itresolves or by clicking the link in the description below. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Let's Open video. Before we jump into this one, I just want to mention I know we missed a few episodes over the last week or so. Honestly, I don't have a good excuse for you other than work has been extraordinarily busy right now, and unfortunately we're moving offices, things like that, and so I'm having to do a little bit of extra work there. That just means I don't have quite as much time as I would like to do the things that I would like to do, like It Resolves stuff. So I do apologize. We do plan to jump back in full-fledged. I know we missed a podcast too. Lots of things that we didn't get to do that we normally do. So I do apologize for that, but we are going to jump back in. And today we are jumping in with a pack of 2014 core sets. So this is a pack, or a set I should say, that we've opened up a good bit on this channel, and I really like this set. There's a lot of really cool planeswalkers, things like that, of course. It is a core set, so as we go through, just keep that in mind. We will not be seeing like crazy powerful cards, despite there being a few probably in this set. We're not necessarily guaranteed to see any. So with all that being said, I'm gonna drop this down just a little bit. We are going to go through every single card, so hopefully we'll be able to figure out what our first round draft pick would be, all that stuff. It is a core set, like I said, so just make sure we keep that power level in mind as we go through. So our first card here is Marauding Maul. It is a 5/3 for 2 and 2 red. It attacks each combat if able, unless you control a creature named Advocate of the Beast. Now cards like this is like very similar to maybe the Bubbling Cauldron kind of combo, where you're very dependent on literally another specific card, not just like, it could be any beast. No, this has to be Advocate of the Beast. With that being said, this is kind of just an okay aggressive top end for like a red deck wins. It's 4 mana, so right at the top of the curve for that kind of deck. And a 5/3 that attacks every turn if able. I mean, that's a lot of damage coming in, so it's actually a very aggressively costed card, in my opinion. Now, it's going to be traded off most likely with something a little bit lower than that, but the point of this card is literally just to try and finish off the game, try and be attacking every turn. So I think that this is okay enough on its own, that it's okay if you don't necessarily end up with the Advocate of the Beast, but you do have to specifically kind of be in that red deck wins style deck where you're literally just as fast as I can trying to win. That is very possible, so I'm going to keep this here for now. We'll see what the rest of the pack holds. Trollhide is an enchant creature for 2 and a green. The enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has pay 1 and a green and regenerate this creature. Normally I don't like enchant creatures, you guys know that. I will say Theros Beyond Death is testing me in that regard, but normally in past sets I tend not to really enjoy enchanted creatures solely because you open yourself up again for that 2-for-1 value on the opponent's side. However, this having the regeneration tagged onto it actually kind of gets around that. You do have to leave up mana for it. It's not just like a free kind of regeneration ability, but it does give you that option at the very least to say, well, if you've got a kill spell, just regenerate, or something along those lines. So there's a little bit more upside to this than like your basic enchant creature. All that to say, though, I like the Maul a lot better. It's aggressive. It's on its own a decent creature. Trollhide, obviously, you got to have the right creature to tag it to and things like that. I'd prefer just to have a card that's very good on its own. Naturalize is a very classic card. Instant for 1 and a green, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Pretty straightforward card, and often as the case is with these kinds of cards, it does tend to be more of a sideboard card. Now again, Theros Beyond Death, if we were looking at that set, very different. Obviously a lot of enchantments in that one, but this is just your average core set. You're not going to necessarily see a lot of artifacts or enchantments on the field at any given time. If you do find yourself up against one, you want to sideboard this in, absolutely. You should definitely do that, but in general, not a main board card, definitely not a good first pick. Angelic Wall is a 0/4 for 1 and a white. It does have Defender, so it can't attack, and it has Flying, so it is able to block in the air, which is nice. This is an interesting card. I feel like there's some specific deck that I'm sure would love to have this, but in general, I don't like it as a first pick, solely because it is just kind of a stall card. It doesn't do a lot for you. It's not an aggressive card like the Maul Horn where you're going to be dealing damage with it. It literally just sits there and blocks, and sometimes that's really, really good, but it depends on the rest of the deck. And honestly, these walls are not necessarily good for first picking because you don't know what deck you're in yet. And this isn't a reason to be in any kind of deck, so I don't necessarily see it as a good strong first pick. Again, Maulhorn, definitely a much more aggressive card, definitely the card I'd take over it. Vile Rebirth is an instant for 1 black. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. That can be any graveyard, worth noting there. Put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Generally speaking, these cards are like okay, but not amazing. I don't really love these kinds of things in draft necessarily. In the early game, they're okay, but you're dependent on a creature already being in the graveyard, which in the early game may not be the case. You may not have that yet. But on top of that, in the late game, you're just getting a 2/2. And yeah, you can do this at instant speed, so you can kind of surprise trade off with something maybe in the mid game, but generally you'll find that I think this is a little bit undervalued. I don't think it's that good of a card. Dawnstrike Paladin is a 2/4 for 3 and 2 white. It has 2 keyword abilities. Anything with a lot of keyword abilities in a core set, probably worth taking a look at the very least. 2/4 with Vigilance, so it does not have to tap when it attacks, and it has lifelink, so it can gain life anytime it's dealing damage to anything. Lots of keywords on this one, like I said, but I will say I feel like it's still fairly overcosted. And what I mean by that is it's a 2/4. It's got a big butt. It's going to sit there and probably take some hits for a few turns, in which case you'll probably be gaining a little bit of life thanks to that lifelink. But I don't love it. It's not my favorite thing solely because that 2 power just means it's not really going to be able to get in for a lot of damage. Now, that being said, if you're in a position where you're already in a winning position, this is amazing because you attack with it, it doesn't tap, and then no matter what the opponent plays, you're going to be able to block on the swing back. Awesome, love that, absolutely love that. But it's not like it's going to be dealing a ton of damage, and it's not like it's going to be trading up very often. A lot of times you'll find this is just going to sit there and probably wall off some kind of threat, which is fine, but it eventually will get outpowered. So I don't love this as much as I love the Maulhorn still. I'm not expecting we're going to be taking the Maulhorn, I hope not, but I do think it's a better card than the Paladin here. Kancil is 1 and 2 blue for an instant counter target spell. Absolutely the golden standard for standard counter spells, and that it's a 3 mana counter. That tends to be where we see a lot of the standard counter spells land. Unless there's some kind of drawback to the counter, your opponent can pay out of it, things like that. This one, honestly, in limited is perfectly fine. It's really not bad at all. You normally want to have something more like an Essence Scatter, which is going to absolutely counter a creature. It can't counter anything else, but it is going to hit a creature. It's just more efficient at 2 mana. I'd rather have that, but countering any target spell always is going to be relevant in a game of limited. This costing 3 mana, also not that big of a drawback. Again, we're in a core set and we're in limited. You hold on to this until they've got something really threatening that you just want to deal with without ever having to hit like a removal spell or anything like that. So there's a lot of upside to counter spells in limited. I still prefer to go with the creature and go aggressive if you can, especially in a core set where there's not necessarily a lot of complicated keywords and things like that, new mechanics or anything. I would prefer to go just as aggressive as possible. So I think still I'm going to take the Maulhorn, but Kancil, not a bad pick for sure if you're in blue. Sensory Deprivation is an enchant creature for 1 blue, and the enchanted creature gets -3/-0. Pretty straightforward blue card. I don't love it in general. I think it's very efficient, but it doesn't kill anything, and it doesn't get around activated abilities, which kind of sucks. -3/-0, that's pretty significant. Like, you'll probably be able to kind of neutralize a threat on the opponent's side of the field. And especially for 1 mana, it's not like it's asking a lot of you. But I don't love it. It still gets to sit there and block, which is kind of the big downside. So in general, I don't think this is that great of a card. Spore Mound is a 3/3 for 3 and 2 green. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 green Sapperling creature token onto the battlefield. Now, this is the kind of card that I love. It's just a value engine. No matter what, you know you're going to have to be playing lands throughout the game, no matter what turn it is. Getting a little bit of extra value on it, even though this doesn't say landfall, it's kind of landfall. Getting added value from just doing that is amazing. It's great. It's something you're going to do anyway. Why not get a little bit of a extra token out there for it? So I do think this beats the Maulhorn. It's a less aggressive card in that it's not necessarily needing to attack every turn or anything like that. But it does spit out quite a lot of tokens if it can stick on the field for a while. So I do think it's worth it. It's one of those cards that helps you go wide really, really quickly. And if it's not dealt with, you can certainly win the game off of it. Oromancer is a 2/2 for 2 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, you can return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, enchantments not quite as prevalent in this set or in just limited usually, unless it's a very specific set. There is Beyond Death. But this certainly does have some value. Now, what I will say is I would never take this first pick. I would take this after I have an enchantment that I know I want to bring back for it. So unfortunately, this is not going to be the pick, but this is a very powerful card and with some really beautiful art too. Rebecca Gay, always killing it. Our first uncommon is Steel Form Sliver. I always forget slivers are in this set. We open it all the time and I forget. It's a 2/2 for 2 and a white. Sliver creatures you control get +0/+1. If you don't know what the slivers are, essentially they're cards that boost other slivers, or in this case, all slivers. That can be, in this case, I believe it's always creatures or sliver creatures you control. In the old days of Magic, it was all slivers, so you could be playing a sliver deck and be in a really bad position against another sliver deck, but and I do think they fixed that. I'm always a little hesitant to like talk too extensively on slivers because it's one of those like high risk, high reward strategies. If you find like a really good bomb sliver, definitely worth taking it first, but it's really hard to like just fit into slivers long term in a limited environment, solely because specifically in draft, I should say, a little bit easier in sealed, but if you don't open the cards, you can't use them, and you have to have a bunch of slivers to make it work. I do think this is a good sliver, but I don't think it's a reason to be in the sliver deck necessarily. It gives everything a little bit more viability just long term, which is good, but it's not dealing extra damage. It doesn't give it necessarily evasion or anything. And so I don't think it's the pick here. I say that with hesitance, knowing that some people would take this for slivers and win, trophy, whatever, do some really cool stuff, and that's great. I try to play it a little bit safe, so I think Spore Mound is definitely a safer pick. Brave the Elements is an instant for 1 white. Choose a color. White creatures you control gain protection from the chosen color until the end of the turn. Again, I don't necessarily think this is a card that I would take. I expect a little bit more out of the uncommon slot. Unfortunately, we're not getting it here, but this is one of those like very good sideboard cards if you're in a white deck, maybe even main deckable card, I don't know, but it doesn't do a whole lot unless you're really heavy on white. It's great to get around a kill spell or like a board sweeper or something like that. The problem is, like, if you're up against, a board sweeper deck, that's a big cost on them. Like, that's not necessarily something you're going to run up against very often, and like they're gonna have to play around it pretty heavily too because it's limited. The game is won with creatures, which means they're probably hedging their bets on creatures a little bit, which isn't necessarily good. So I don't love this card. I don't think it's one that I would first pick. If I found myself in like a white weenie deck somehow in limited, absolutely would love to take it, but I definitely don't think it's the pick here. Ooh. Phantom Warrior is a 2/2 for 1 and 2 blue, and it very simply can't be blocked. It is unblockable. This is a pretty strong card, if I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of things you can do with this. We saw a Trollhide early in the pack. Great card to tag with a Trollhide. Gives it regeneration, which is better even than that. But the fact is that this is being unblockable just makes it really, really good. You can get around so many things with that. So I do love this card. I don't know if it's better than Spore Mound. The value off of Spore Mound is quite good, but this is obviously a good aggressive card as well. So let's put them together for now. We'll see what our rare is. Well, I mean, we're probably going to pick this, guys. Okay, so Scourge of Valcos, I hope I'm saying that correctly, is 2 and 3 red, which is a pricey cost. For a 4/4 dragon with flying, whenever it or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. Pay 1 red and it gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. Classic fire breathing effect. You got to take this. It's an evasive threat. It is a very strong bomb in a red deck. The fact that it deals extra damage based on the number of dragons in play can be relevant. You definitely would prioritize dragons a little heavily after taking this, but it's not necessarily the big thing here. Really, the fact of the matter is it's a 4/4 flyer. Your opponent has to deal with it. Not only that, but it can be pumped very, very quickly. So absolutely, I do think that's the pick, and we did not get a foil. So that's going to be my pick. I think that's a pretty obvious one, but feel free, of course, to let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Start a discussion, talk about any of these cards. We would love to have that. So feel free. But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like or a comment down below. And as always, please make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our awesome content. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next Let's Open video.